got it. Okay, now I want you people to leave me alone.
Hello, Wayne, Carol,
Hi, Kristen.
John. Amazing. In 1 minute, since John gave me the call that you're on your way, Carol. Literally, you're on and you're ready, rearing to go. So that's fantastic. I know, is Paul Manning on? Yeah. Okay. So we're just getting folks on. Hi, Peter. How you doing?
Doing fine.
And great, fantastic. And we're, I know Rick is on, and hi, Wayne, good to see you.
Hi, Kristen.
And we had a video we were going to play here, but it's actually not it's not cooperating. So I might have to have Paul when he joins to start the video, and I'll have him share the screen. But anyway, we'll just kind of wait for folks to get on. We're not officially at the 6 p.m. Spot yet, but and then I myself am going to migrate downstairs with Rick, so we're together. So we'll get started in just a moment.
Where did Kristen go?
Was there a minute ago? She's changing locations. Is that little white dot the camera?
Yeah.
Want to try something? Made that picture up there of the one of the boat. See if I can put it on there.
You can see. Maybe. That's our mode. I don't think they can us.
Yeah, I think Kristen could hear us.
Good evening.
Hello.
Is that Peter?
Yeah, John?
Hey, great. I see Paul. Hi, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, very well, thanks. I think we have to do face to face together. So Paul, before we get started, Quentin's on, great. We have Patrick, hi, from California. Paul, I was trying to play your video, see the Facebook here,
Oh, yeah.
and somehow it's
It
not.
requires a login, I think.
Oh, I
Do you
have to
want-
log into Facebook. Do you want
Yeah,
to,
you want me-
if I share my, if you take the, share screen, do you want to share yours and then?
Sure. Yeah.
That's great.
My
We're
end.
gonna start off with a little bit of an icebreaker, and I don't know if you've seen, Paul Manning's Frolic, but, he was able to get a drone, coverage of Frolic sailing, and I just thought it was spectacular to see it from that angle. So I'm gonna stop sharing it, and Paul can share his screen.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and try to load that now. So if I go screen one, I think that is that showing up now?
Yeah.
Yes,
The thing I
Yeah.
loved about this was it would say Hinckley patio cruiser or a picnic boat, I should say, not a patio cruiser that is going by. So if I play it again. Oh, that's the different one. Sorry, that's the close up.
oh, that's a pretty one though. That's the one I was thinking of, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is off West Shop, and my cousin has a house there that I was coming to meet him, and he pulled the drone out and was capturing this. But the one I showed a minute ago is the patio, or I'm sorry, the picnic boat, not the patio cruiser, going by in front of us, but as we're sailing into Vineyard Haven. But it was somewhat funny, and he was asking, "Why is it you were pulling those lines? What were you doing?" Because at one point I'm having to trim the sails a bit as we're coming in. My wife Amy was down below trying to call and figure out which mooring we were going to be picking up once we got to Vineyard Haven. Yeah, right there, I'm pulling the main in a little, leaving the helm alone as it starts to round up.
Well, this is great. So when we come up to Nantucket area, Marion, Buzzards Bay, where Paul has raised his hand to offer to be fleet captain for that region, we could have the drone come out and we can each have our own special aerial footage of our vessels.
Yep.
So thanks for
Right.
sharing. Let's get started. This is
Okay.
great.
I'll
Who do we have on now? I think we have fair number of folks. Great, Richard. Great. Good to
Kristen?
see you.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Hello. And then Rick's Rick is here. So it's just the background.
Boy, that doesn't work.
So
Wow.
let's get started. We have a lot of
For some reason.
things to chat about. We are going to have John talk to us a little bit first, but we also Ed Stroh, is that Ed's iPad?
Afraid not. That's Ed Henry.
Okay. So we also have Walt Shoemaker who's going to be joining us, and of course Rick is on, and Paul. So I'm just going to go back, share my screen, and okay. And we can get started. Okay. I don't know how to get rid of this. That's the problem. There we go. Okay. Okay. So can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, super. All right. So I'm excited that this is the fifth B40 tech session. And we are actually, I'm sorry, it's the sixth, right? We're counting. And we have a packed schedule. Last sessions, we actually had an hour and a half. So we're trying to be conscious of everyone's time around this. We shrunk it to an hour, but I think these topics will absolutely fill an hour. We're going to start with a little bit of an overview of just a reminder of the 2022, what we want to accomplish, and then quickly go into fleet captain locations with a quick update from Paul. And then we're going to move to John Melchner, who's going to spend 10 minutes talking to us about what makes the B40 iconic. We're going to move when Walt comes back and joins us. We're going to talk about things that break on the B40, and some things might be not that obvious, but things that break. We're going to talk a little bit about extreme weather sailing, the B40. So instead of just heavy weather sailing, we're going to talk a little bit about extreme weather. Then a quick highlight on whisker pulse setup that I think Walt could share. And then we can, if we have time at the end, we can do a lightning round to answer the question, why B40 versus some other units. So with that, just to kind of, yep. Can you hear okay, everyone?
Yes.
Somebody
Okay.
has, it has their mute off and there's music or television in the background.
Yeah, it looks like Quentin. If I look at participants, maybe we could mute Quentin. Is Mariana on? Or Kirsten, if you have the ability to mute that one line, I think.
Yeah. Let
That was where
me
the noise
see
was
if
coming.
I can.
Oh, it's muted. Never mind.
Oh, is it?
I think
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So we have Jeff that just joined us here, and hi, Pam. Got it. Terry. Fantastic. Okay. So just to kind of reiterate where we wanted to go in 2022, we have 4 core focus. One is doing what we're doing now, which is sharing knowledge and intelligence, these tech sessions, but also other things. We might want to, let's say, interview Henry Hinckley. We're going to want to do some website training to how you use the forum and the community bulletin board in the website. So there are things we want to do with that. We also want to expand our membership, not only outreach to other non-member B40 owners, but also the Pilot 35, which we've already started. We have several new members. The B40 awareness as a classic, that was a big area that we know we've clicked over number of years since the last production. So we're certainly exposure in regattas like the Elf Classic and our own regattas, but also there's an idea being floated out to reestablish our relationship and membership with the National Sailing Hall of Fame in Newport, and populate, artifacts in that area. Obviously, leaving the best for last is, as we emerge from COVID, the 2022, have a little safer environment for which we can rendezvous and have on-water gatherings. So if we continue to keep this circle going with the activities that Jeff and with his vision from last year, Mariana and Paul has been a tremendous contribution to each one of these quadrants already, that this is what we want to do for this year. So with that, we, if you hadn't been on the annual meeting, we shared this map of the US. Certainly we have global owners of B40s, but you can see that, you know, some of the areas in gray boxes that are starred have the most concentration. We see Patrick here. Thank you for joining, and John Sovereign and others from the Southern Pacific coast. There's 4 B40s in and around the LA, you know, area, between San Diego and LA. We also have a large number and growing in the Buzzards Bay area, Nantucket. We have 5 between Maine and Nova Scotia up at the top. We have 8 in the mid-Atlantic, which we define as Martha's Vineyard to Long Island Sound. And then we separate 6 more in the mid-Atlantic coast, which is New York Harbor and New Jersey, where Rick and I reside in the Atlantic Highlands. The most, of course, is the Chesapeake Bay, Upper Bay, but we also have Lower Bay. So we kind of split this out. And also this Atlantic southern coast is very much growing. 6 members are in the kind of the South Carolina, you know, region, and, you know, kind of to St. Augustine, Florida. And we have, it's great to see Wayne on. We have, you know, South Florida, and 2, you know, in the Caribbean, which if you combine South Florida and the Caribbean, great sailing waters, you have, you know, what we're kind of formulating as potential fleets. So with that, Paul was going to spend a minute, just, you can see only one name is here. What our goal is to do is fill out one name at least for each of these starred boxes, at least to start. And, you know, Paul, having moved from San Francisco to the Buzzards Bay area, you know, is kind of starting up, reaching out to those B40 owners and non-member B40 owners in the area. So Paul, just hand it over to you to talk a little bit about what you've been doing just even over the past month.
Sure. It's been, now that the boat's put away for the winter, I have more time in my hands, and subbing up as sort of the fleet captain for the, I describe it as sort of Newport to Nantucket, Buzzards Bay sort of being in the middle. My first step was really to do a little research on where the boats were and try to find out, you know, through the members that are already on board. I talked to Ed Stroh, who helped me get in contact with a few other people. Found that there's actually 10 boats that I'm aware of that I have a line of sight to. 4 of those are actually in Marion, where my boat is. And in fact, my boat was put away for the shed for the winter. There are 3 others that are in that same heated shed that my boat is stored in. And so I reached out to the boatyard, got the names of those owners, and put together sort of a roster. And then through the, you know, email exchanges I've had so far, I've had a large number of people express interest in getting together and potentially doing a cruise in or maybe a social event, you know, somewhere local. I did find we have 2 boats that are on Nantucket. There's a boat Surrender and another boat called Magic. And then there's a boat called Black Magic, who is actually in Marion. I've met them, taking the launch out to get to my boat. My wife and I were on board the same launch one day and spoke to them. Sinead is one that's actually for sale, sadly, but it seems like it's in contract, may have a new owner shortly. And then through Ed, I've learned about, you know, his boat there, work he's been doing, and Loggerhead is the other. But I feel like there's 2 more that, oh, and Hyannis, there's 2. And 7 of the 10 boats that I'm aware of are members of the, you know, Chesapeake Bay Bermuda 40 Association. And then the last thing I did is sort of an ancillary check, is I went out and looked at how many B40s are up for sale, and found, to my surprise, there's 19 of them. And a number of them are actually in Massachusetts and Marion. So I think there's 4 more that previous I was unaware of that are up for sale. So hopefully, you know, we figure out who gets those, and through word of mouth, we may have, you know, a number of other boats in the area. But it's been kind of fun. I've learned a little bit about the centerboard, the worm gear and mechanics from Ed and some other people, and a number of cranks. one of the interesting points is I have boat number 137 and the gentleman has number 138. So almost sister ships are in sort of the same area, which is kind of nice.
No,
And that's a
that's-
quick report.
Thank you so much, Paul. And basically the takeaway here too is expanding membership, connecting, sharing knowledge with those. And then I think, and you didn't include this quite yet in there, maybe for good reason, but you know, planning some rendezvous and on the water activities with some of these boats. And again, just kind of coordinating the planning. That's a lot to do in a short time, but even if anyone from any of these other areas has interest in even just having an onshore get together with those that you know are B40 owners to kick off some regional you know, camaraderie, I think that that's really great. You know, any step is a step in a great direction. So with that, thank you, Paul. We're going to go on to with John Melchner, and we had this wonderful conversation about why, you know, is the B40, you know, iconic, and you know, what makes it iconic? Is it the way it's built, or is it the way it looks, its classic design? So some interesting quotes that he shared with me is this, you know, the B40, he quote, the B40 carries the fragrance of quality. And Mate from the World's Best Sailboats, who's the author of that. We also have a quote from Owen Stevens, I wish I designed the B40. So, and that was at a book signing, right, John? I didn't mean to steal.
Carol and I were at the CCA Spring Rendezvous in Chicago in 2003, and Owen Stevens was there signing copies of his newly published books. One was a book full of plans of boats he designed, and the other one was All Listen Sailing To. But anyway, in the signing process, as you went up, he asked you, do you sail one of my boats? And I said, no, I sail a Bermuda 40. And he said, boy, I wish I had designed that boat. So it was a very satisfying moment for Carol and I. But it gets us to who really designed the Bermuda 40. Is it Bill Tripp? Is it Henry Hinckley? Or is it a trick question? And it's a bit of a trick question because there's a third player there that most people don't know about. And it's the Oldak group, O-L-D-A-K. And the Oldak group consisted of two brothers that I know of, Harold and Irv Oldak, and another gentleman who is an honorary member of our association, Gil Siegel. Anyway, they had contacted Tripp and asked Tripp to design a variant of what was then the Vitesse class, which was a Bermuda 40 looking boat, and the Block Island 40. And they had Bill Tripp build a model of it and do some tank testing. So it was somewhat different in hull form from the Vitesse class and the Block Island 40. At least I'm surmising that. But
Yeah.
there are also more parts to it than that. Gil Siegel, who was an electrical engineer, who happens to be Dr. Rosenthal's cousin. Anyway, Gil was an electrical engineer by trade, and he and Henry Hinckley was a very hard man to get to know. Gil and he had a good working relationship, and Gil designed the electrical system on the B40 as it was initially built, which had the two alternators on it, the big Leake-Neville alternator and the smaller regular alternator that went with the Perkins engine. And the reason—
So John, I apologize for jumping in. On the screen, I have a little quiz where people can guess who designed what. I'm not sure if you can see the screen, but I didn't want to give away all the answers yet.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but
Well,
if we, and that's why I jumped in there. But So
Well,
we know
that's-
number two was neither Henry Hinckley or Bill Tripp, right? Which is not one but two alternaters. At
Okay,
least
I won't,
Bill.
I
Yeah.
won't give any more hints.
So maybe we can first, but John, fill in as we go through each one. So any guesses from folks on the phone? Chain plates versus turnbuckles. Henry Hinckley or Bill Tripp?
Well, I want to tell you that, I mean, Gil definitely is responsible for Gil Siegel is definitely responsible for the entire electrical plan and the two alternators. He also designed the interior. Gil was the one who essentially found Henry. I mean, Gil and Henry Hinckley were good friends. They met. Gil had he already had a Hinckley. He had a what do you call a pilot. He already had a pilot. He had a working relationship with Hinckley. The two of them would meet every year. I know at the boat show. They were both engineers. Hinckley was an aeronautical engineer. Gil, an electrical engineer. The two of them spoke engineering all the time. They had a working relationship. And Gil had actually sent the plans to several yards, including Hinckley. So the plans were already drawn by the time Hinckley got to see them. I do have a pencil drawing. I think Walter can attest to this. Walter knows a lot of this information, but I have the pencil drawings by Gil that he had a lot. He had an awful lot to do with it. Probably maybe even underestimated. But I know for sure that he did the electrical and he did the interior. And I have the literature. I have the letters of him shopping the builder. So Hinckley was one of several builders that were shopped, and I think Gil already had a relationship going with Bill Tripp. So he played probably an unrecognized part in the genesis of the boat.
Wow, Richard, the history there is you think you know a lot of history, but just when you think you know a lot, you just don't know. And I think it's wonderful. And one of the great things about the website too is that a lot of these historic artifacts we can convert to whether it's pictures or PDFs and things like that we can house on our website in the members only area. And we may be knocking on your door to ask, maybe we can get some pictures to upload into our artifacts. So that's fantastic.
We'll do that.
Great.
But I have the original correspondence between Hinckley and Gil Siegel, about doing the boat. I haven't looked at it in a while, so I can't quote it to you. But but I do have the original correspondence between them.
That's great. That's really great. So you're gonna get a call, by the way.
The old DAC group had minutes, had meetings every month, and Gil kept the minutes of the old DAC group's meetings, which I have.
Wow. Okay, so we know that we have a whole historic club historian, or association historian, that's just raised his hand. Sorry, Richard. I'm tapping you on the shoulder. So moving to the tapered centerboard versus the center plate, and then any guesses, and then back to John to give us the background about that.
I see you added Gil's name to the trivia. Good.
I'm quick.
That was fast. Boy, that was fast.
Yeah.
Well, incidentally, it's CIGAL.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So
Kristen, you want to go
any
back
guesses on the tapered centerboard versus the center plate? Anyone want to guess before John gives us the history behind that?
I'm going to say Hinckley.
Okay. One for Hinckley.
The answer is, I don't know. I think it was
Okay.
Hinckley. I think it was Hinckley, but I'm not sure. if I had seen the questions before, I might have been able to figure it out, but for openers, I just don't know. Henry Hinckley, for those of us who lived through World War II and beyond, Henry had what we'll call cost plus percentage of cost contracts on the military contracts that he had to build minesweepers, other kinds of wooden boats. So the more money he spent, the more money he made. And he very sensibly used that to buy equipment. So he bought a dynamometer, he bought equipment to extrude aluminum, he bought equipment to machine things. So he was able to make a lot of his own parts. And he also had a foundry where he could cast things. And he bought a marine supply company called Manset Marine Supply that was stocking dealership for other New England boat builders. And what it enabled Hinckley to do was to buy in quantity, get a reduced price, and then not only that, but build his own equipment and supply it through Manset Marine Supply. I know that because the boat we bought was partially owned by the fellow who owned the successor to Manset Marine Supply, Harry Miller and Company. It was a big, thick catalog, and it had a picture of our boat on the front of the catalog. And in 1977, I was buying parts wholesale for 60% off of what they were selling for in the retail boat shop in Annapolis. And I was in hog heaven. That doesn't happen very often. But regardless of that point, I think Henry had more of a chance of building bronze centerboards and then tapering them in a way that was probably cast right in, but I don't know that for sure. Anyway, that's my news on that. I don't know.
Kristen?
Yes, yes. Hi.
May I ask a question of John? When
Yeah.
you talk about, it's interesting, I just had my boat out of the water and they were, when we were putting it back in, they were painting the centerboard. So usually I'm on the boat when they're doing that, but I got to see it. When you say tapered, what part is tapered?
The forward edge of it is thicker than the trailing edge.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Got an airfoil shape on it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good question. And the screw jack, that's kind of a Maine thing, John. So there are a lot of rocks in Maine.
Yeah, that's the mechanism is very unusual. In most cases, there was usually some pulleys and a line, perhaps a wire pulling it up. But that screw jack was great because it enabled Hinckley to have a very heavy centerboard. We haven't had ours out, but know folks who have, and it takes two people to lift it. Anyway, it enabled it to kick up and then come back down without breaking a cable or a cable end. So it was a very elaborate piece of equipment. It got a lot of heavy bronze down pretty low in the hull, and which helped the ballast. And it allowed you to trim the centerboard because the centerboard on our boat, at least, is very, influences very greatly the sail trim of the boat, actually how the boat can point. And what we do if we're going on a long board, we'll set the autopilot, set the sails, and then I can stand down in the cabin at the cabin table with the centerboard crank in my hand, and then watch which way the steering wheel is ticking on the autopilot to see which way it's correcting the boat to come back on course. And I can lower or raise the centerboard and change the center of lateral resistance so that I can trim the boat out that it is perfectly trimmed on that course. in addition to trimming the sails, of course. But we use the centerboard as a trimming mechanism also. Now that's my news on that point.
Excellent. The history and the operation of the centerboard, fantastic. But John, one last thing that we talked about was really, why the B40 for most of us who are owners, the way it's built or the way it looks. So I think that that's kind of the age-old question, and it'd be interesting to hear from everyone, kind of what drew you, or it could be both, one or the other. But John, did you want to, this has been, we talk about the classic nature now of the B40, and if we were to make tweaks to the actual design itself, will this translate into loss of value or greater usability, still retaining the beautiful classic lines? How far do we go in making modification? But I think there are lots of questions that were wrapped around the one question, is it the way it's built or the way it looks that, kind of is the big draw for the B40. So maybe we open it out for whoever wants to kind of share what takes priority.
Kristen, I'm going to jump in here. This is Wayne. Sorry, I don't mean to monopolize the conversation, but I feel like, as I said, I think on one of our previous meetings, I'm sort of the newbie. I've only had my boat for 35 years, I think. And before that, I was in South Florida. So I had 2 cigarettes that Don Arno built for me. And then I went from there to a Hobie Cat, and I learned to sail in the Hobie Cat. And then I bought a Red Wing 30 that was built up in a CNC design. But in the process of looking for the next boat, I was looking around for boats, and I happened to be up at Stewart, and I looked across the canal and I saw this gorgeous boat. And I asked the guy, I said, is that boat for sale? And he sort of laughed at me, and I guess everything's for sale. But nonetheless, I said, that's a sailboat. And I had no idea. And then when I was looking for, the next boat, somebody asked me if I knew what a Hinckley Bermuda 40 was, a salesman. I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I've seen one of them, and I said, that was the sailboat, and again, I feel I was I still am very unsophisticated. And he said, well, I have a used one for sale. And I bought it from the original owner, a guy by the name of Tillman. And at the time it was, I forget how many years old, 20 years old. It's 53 or 54 years old now. But anyway, I guess my point, it turns out I had no idea what I was buying, but it actually catapulted me into the sailing world, because, any marina that you're in, somebody walks up and says something. At the same time, I've sailed it offshore and functional, and really, bad weather and so on and so forth. So I think the answer is both, but I have to say that if anybody looks at it, they go, that's a sailboat.
Very good. Wayne, we don't get tired of hearing your stories and your photos. Anyone else want to chime in before we move to the next?
I'd like to chime in here. Nothing looks like a Bermuda 40. I'd like to get John's impression of the Bermuda, of the 48. They did build a 48, which was supposed to be for people who would outgrown the 40. The 48, the Hinckley 48, actually has very much the same lines. I'm not sure how many they built. It was supposed to be for people that wanted to graduate from the 40. And I think there's also a Southwester 50 that looks very much like it also. But the other Southwesters don't really look like it very much, but there's absolutely nothing that looks like a Bermuda 40 or arouses the same emotions. I think that all the owners will share this with me. When people pass your boat, what do they say? Do they ask how it performs, or do they tell you about how it looks? And as far as performance is concerned, when I bought the boat, I got on the boat, and the first thing I discovered, this boat is rather tippy. This boat is tender. And I was surprised to see how tender the boat was. Okay. And the other thing that you discover after a while, for a 40-foot boat, that's a wet boat. You know, you can get wet on that boat. It's not got, doesn't have very high freeboard. So for people that want to do recreational sailing, you know, they kind of have to know that as far as performance is concerned. It doesn't perform all that great on the wind. It doesn't back very easily, you know, and it's an old design. It was really built for the CCA. It was built for the CCA rules, so it's not competitive anymore. We race it on Wednesday nights. I can tell you, it's not meant for river racing. Every time we tack, you know, we give away 3 boat lengths to everybody else. So I can't say too much about performance except that it was safe. You can talk to John to Walter about it. I mean, he had a disastrous sail, you know, from the Chesapeake. I think it was either up. No, I think it was coming down from New England. You can tell what happened to him. I mean, the boat really survived very adverse conditions. It's a safe boat, but it's by no means a modern racing boat. But as far as looking at it and responding to the way this boat looks, any owner can tell you that. I mean, they're constantly bombarded with compliments. People will motor circles around it and take pictures. It is iconic because of the way it looks, and that hasn't changed. That's my thinking.
Great.
Yeah, I gotta echo that. It's not so much what they say, but I've taken my boat out, you know, the South River a couple of times, and as I go by them, they don't say anything, but they all come out of their boat and line the side is facing me and watch me. And like you said, it doesn't back up very well. You know, it's like a Keystone Cops episode when I try to back into my slip, but I'm never at a loss for people to come down and try to help me get it in, just so they can look at the boat. So
Yeah,
in terms of the looks, I mean, I was always, I mean, I grew up on the bay, and basically if it didn't have a clipper bow, you know, it wasn't a sailboat. So that's where but the shear line on the thing is beautiful. And so I've come along to, I like the spoon bows now, rather than the clipper bows, because, you know, I grew up like on schooners and bug eyes and that sort of thing. But this is real nice. And then the workmanship and how sturdily it's built was just an added bonus.
No, that's really kind of the whole experience that we had too. And of course, there is a certain sense of solid feel when you're sailing in heavy weather. You know, that you just always felt grounded. I've been in much larger boats and you know, just felt pushed around by you know, a heavy weather, but not the B40. Never felt that way, whether it was on, you know, my dad's boat or my own or our own. But anyway, with that, I know, I think Walt might have had a situation arise. He was going to talk to us about things that break on the B40. And maybe I can start off with this, but unless Walt has joined us. Okay, so he shared some photos with us, but I'll start off on this. You can see the stern pulpit here on any time, but you know, thing that broke for us was the sheet that attached to the call it the little hook on the back that holds the sheet. The fisheye snapped during a Hove 2 situation of 40 knots, and I think we're 2,200 miles offshore during this big blow. And so, you know, having to jury rig to effectuate the Hove 2 was something. It was the quickest bowline you ever tie to brace it against the winch on the mizzen in order to keep it sheeted in for the Hove 2 during this big blow. But you know, that was one thing, and we got into a conversation also around, you know, what are spare parts that you keep on the boat. And John, you and I were talking a little bit about that. It's one thing, things that break. It's another thing, what spare parts do you keep? So, John, maybe you could kind of list a couple of the things that you keep spares of on your B40.
Carol keeps reminding me anytime she opens a locker, there's boat stuff in it. But I do carry 2 extra starter motors for the 4108, 2 extra Leak-Neville alternators, the big ones, and 2 starting battery alternators. I've accumulated them over the years. I had them rebuilt. I packed them in preservative, and I keep them down low in the lockers underneath the settee berths. Beside that, we've got just a whole lot of tools and odds and ends on the boat, a lot of line, a lot of spare nuts and bolts. I would have to admit, after the boat owning us for 45 years, it's gotten a bit excessive. So
I'm sorry, Carol.
Get rid of it. But some of that stuff is unique, and I just don't have the heart to throw it out.
But
So
John,
we
it
do have a
doesn't
lot
have
of
to be,
spares.
John, it doesn't have to be on the boat.
Yeah,
Well, we'll have to have the cones
by the
on.
way, if
We talk
anybody,
about weight placement on the boat.
keep it down low, but I have come into possession of a shipmate stove that is an alcohol stove, which is extremely rare. And anybody who wants it can have it. It's a very heavy thing to move about. So if you want it, you probably come with a car to pick it up rather than say, put it in the mail. But it's a beautiful piece of work. And I know from having done it myself, you can rebuild those stoves and put any burner you want in them. Whether it's a propane burner, an alcohol burner. And the advantage of having the spare stove is any of the new stoves that you buy, most of them will not fit in the old stove cavity that's built for the 3-burner shipmate. So I have this freebie that I got, taking up a lot of space in the garage, and anybody who wants it can have it.
Is it a pressurized alcohol stove?
I can't tell. The part that I got with it doesn't have a pressure pump. So
Okay.
I imagine there was a separate storage tank with it that operated under pressure. But if I were going to do anything with it, what I would likely do is convert it to a propane stove. And you just go down to the regular stove parts store and buy the burners.
So others who've had Patrick or Whitney, just things that break or that have broken that were surprised you, anything you want to share, or things you keep spare parts on the boat?
Well, hi everybody, how are you? I'm actually calling you from Sydney. It's 10:45 in the morning, and I have a Hull 187. It's a Mark III sloop that I've had for 16 years. And
Great to have you on today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's just so good because I've got the only B40 in Australia for about, within about 5,000 miles. And like all of you say, everyone comes up to you at the dock and says, who built that boat? It's I wish I'd have a lifetime full of coffees if I had a coffee for every time someone comes up to me. But first of all, why do I like the boat? I'm just going to quickly answer that. B40 to me is perfect, right? Because I live in a land where it's 20 knots 3-4 days a week, and it's pretty routine to go out in a high breeze. And she's a perfect day sailor. She's designed like all these new boats, like the Mars 36 and the Spirit yachts. I mean, not as beautiful as that, but just beautiful, big, roomy cockpit. And of course, it's an accident of design because it was done before the furler came in. And so it's got a gigantic cockpit. I don't have a mizzen mast, so I've got heaps of room in the cockpit. It's a great day sailor boat. I live in a warm climate. I spend 99% of the time on deck, not in the cabin. And I'm always amazed at these new boats. They're built like hotels. You're supposed to spend all this time inside the cabin, and you don't want to spend your time there. And then she's really good offshore. And I've taken her 600 miles out to Lord Howe Island and in the middle of the Pacific and in all kinds of conditions. And she's just a really, really smooth seaworthy boat. So, and there's a lot of shallow water here, mostly sandbanks, but a lot of shallow water here too. And that keel's terrific for it. In terms of things that broken, I have just reinstalled my centerboard. I pulled it out of the water a year or so ago, and one of the bushings just literally fell out of the bottom of the boat onto the cement pier. And I was like, okay, I got a problem. And so we stripped it all out and renovated and actually shortened that worm screw by a little bit. So it only works to about 85% capacity, but I've been told on your forum that the Mark III does really well with not having the centerboard down all the way anyway. I will say my centerboard knocks a lot still when I'm in a sloppy sea. So I don't, I keep it up when I'm offshore for the most part, or I just have it down slightly. Your what do you call them? It's not stanchions, but you've got them here, the posts, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Stanchions.
The stanchions, yep.
Stanchions, yeah. I've had people after a few beers lean too hard on a stanchion and in a high breeze in the harbor, and then the thing cracks the stem. So yeah, I've had them fixed, just rewelded, essentially. I do worry about my pulpit because the occasional young person wants to treat it like a diving board when they go swimming, and you can see it flexing, but it hasn't cracked yet. So I just, if they're really heavy, I don't let them on. But other stuff that breaks, steering cables. I've had that. I'll tell you what's a funny little one is that little acorn screw just below the on the binnacle, just below the wheel or above the wheel.
Yeah.
Don't let that thing pop out.
Yeah.
You lose your steering and you've got no control over anything if that happens. So I every time I step on board, I make sure that's tight. But honestly, I haven't had anything serious break. I busted up my Dorade box where the two front vents are because the guy went sailing and took it offshore in 30 knots, and the bow line got caught and ripped the vent. He should have stowed the vents to start with, but it ripped the vent straight out of the Dorade box. So I had to shipwright redo that. I don't know. It's a tough boat. Outside the centerboard, I've been really happy. The hardware is really built much better than a modern boat. As long as you replace your standing rigging and running rigging and get it checked every year, I've found the boat to be pretty sturdy. So anyway,
Great.
Thanks for the talk. I just thought.
No, Whitney.
Kristen?
Yes. Yeah.
I think what Walt wanted to say, I don't know about the rear pulpit there, but he's really pleased. He got his stanchions redone. You see the one over on the upper left there is cracked, and he had them re-welded. And what impressed him was that little bar that goes laterally there. It actually is a solid bar that goes through the stanchion. It goes through the upright. It's not welded onto either side of it. And so that's good. And he was especially impressed that it has a little drain hole in the bottom.
Had to show that photo.
Yeah, that little photo there with the drain hole. He must have shown that to me 4 times, that the little drain hole.
We've had a stanchion crack right at the base when we tied the boat off to the dock with just a line to the stanchion, and then forgot about it and tried to leave and bent it. But what we did to reinforce it was put a smaller stainless tube right up the center of the whole stanchion and put a weld around the base. And that really stiffened it up quite a bit.
The one that I ran into was, I thought, kind of interesting is Schaefer's whole tagline is, all about strong or legendary strong. And I had one of my mast or the boom tang break off. And then the other ones I've had some challenges with are the half moon Fairleigh cars for the jib and the spinnaker. And that those have sort of a stainless, which has got a bushing of bronze around it that seemed to have seized. And so I was sort of tempted to send it back to Schaefer and say, well, if you guys want to really be legendary, you'll replace these for free. But I haven't gotten around to doing that yet, because I'm pretty sure the answer to that will be, it's 45 years old. What do you want?
Well, I think that there's an interesting, who makes the parts. If Hinkley might be moving toward power and parts for as we reach our 50 plus years here and more. But I know we have 9 minutes left. We could probably carry over and keep this conversation going for the March tech session. But we did want to have some time to talk a little short, on, extreme weather sailing. So, oops, I think I messed that up.
Kristen, before we move
Yeah.
on too much, Paul, you're up
Yes.
in Marion, Massachusetts?
Correct. Yes.
All right, well, I'll email you. The person at Schaefer you want to talk to is a woman named Joy Rule.
Yeah.
And she'll take care of you. And
Okay.
and I'll talk with you about that
That'd be great. No, thank you.
offline.
I've had the same experience. Schaefer goes back a long way, some of the people with Hinkley. And we've gotten very good service out of them, replacing shivs with ball bearing shivs rather than just bushings, things like that. So it's worth talking to them.
I'd like to volunteer that we had to replace both sail tracks. And if I remember correctly, there was some discussion in the yard in terms of the quality of the steel. It was a Hinkley sail track. It goes back to 1980, the quality of the steel that was used. Maybe some other people can speak to this, but we had to fabricate and replace both sail tracks.
Yeah, we had to reservice our windlass, and we had them. We stopped in person. Wonderful people. They'll give you the whole tour of the facility. They very passionate about what they do. But yeah, we were there, and they did a fantastic job as well. So real quick, Rick, I had these thinking maybe we had time to talk about configurations of setting up electronics for chart plotters, but we have our choice. We can talk about that, or we can talk about extreme weather sailing, which we had a couple, thoughts. Imagine you're in 40, 45 knots, and you're way offshore, and how do you, differences between Mark III, Mark II, when to reef, what, wind velocity, would you do that, centerboard turns, also sheeting setup. I think, was it Walt who talked about inner, taking the sheets to the inner, as opposed to around the outer for the full jib, and doing that early. And forestay configuration, such as removable forestays. Rick, I know you have my dad's boat who had a removable that helped in heavy weather situation. Lazy jacks, do they help or not? Are they too much of a hassle? And then the last thing, deck fittings, like such as for a storm sail cutter rig type in the middle of the deck. Is that something that is of interest in heavy air? And the fact that we have a Whitney on who's, we know how high the winds blow in Australia, and certainly Paul, who comes to us from San Francisco, where it regularly blows over 35. And I'm sure every one of us has been in heavy weather situations at some point. So I guess the question is, do we want to spend the last 5 or 6 minutes talking about sharing ideas about the B40 in extreme wind?
Let's see, John's showing a picture of the his boat with just the jib up.
This was taken on the Chesapeake in about a 25 to 30 knot following breeze. And we just made sure the cover was on the main so it didn't get loose. Pulled a little furl in the 130 jib and a mizzen with the running backstay set. And she just loved it, just loved going along. But she digs a big hole in the water. And I think in a couple of more knots of breeze, we would have had the stern wave breaking into the cockpit. But she was doing probably 9 knots in that picture.
Wow.
I think that the 2 quick points I would make right off the bat, I've sailed to Hawaii 3 times and been in a number of really significant winds. The first thing that's not really intuitive to a lot of people is if you have a boom vang, let it off. The ability to have, particularly in gusty wind, have the main depower itself by effectively allowing the top of your sail to luff while you still get power out of the bottom gives you a good amount of steerage and in effect adjusts well to really blustery on and off conditions. At one point you might see your boom shooting up to 45 degrees and you're thinking that's not good, but in reality it's keeping your boat from going to 45 degrees heeled over. I think the other thing is really being prepared with having gear. I mean, Frolic has a storm jib that came with it, and I arguably haven't gotten a chance to fly it yet, which may be a sign of, forthcoming foreshadowing. But knowing where to put your blocks and kind of having sheets that you can get ready to use and be able to deploy it quickly and not have to hodgepodge or try to put things together without the time to do it right is a secondary thought. I think the third relative to centerboard is that a lot of times if you have the centerboard up and you're in cross seas, your boat can actually slide off a wave and it can be a little bit harder to steer it, but it can weather through the waves a lot more appropriately than a full keel or the centerboard all the way down, where water might be thrown up onto the boat more if you have the centerboard all the way down than you would if it were up. Those are my 3 comments.
I got a quick question about the centerboard. When we first got the boat, which was about 10 years ago, people were talking about adding oil to the centerboard well. I spoke to Gil about that. He said there was no reason to do that. But is there I haven't heard that in a couple of years. What's the story now with adding oil? I think 6 quarts of oil to the centerboard well. Anybody know about that?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
an
John,
environmental disaster when you pull it out of the water. for
Right,
one.
that's true.
And I use vegetable oil, just Crisco or something
I mean,
like
that's
that.
vegetable oil, but I mean, is there a reason to do it and should we do it?
Yes, the reason is that you need to lubricate the gear train that is the jack screw and the nut, for lack of a better description, that rides on it up and down, that raises the thing. I had it heavily greased when I had it replaced, which was good, but it's been a couple years, so I probably need to do some vegetable oil this spring when we do it.
Well, another thing that's sort of an uncovered thing is if you look at the shaft, if you look at the place where the handle goes through, there's a fitting there. You undo that fitting and you put a grease fitting on it, and you pump grease down, and that's what greases the very bottom of the shaft.
So there are various fittings depending on when your boat was created. Some of them have a fitting that allows you to drain the oil off before you take the boat out of the water. Of course, if you've been bounding around on the ocean in 20-foot waves, that probably is of little interest.
So what's the
So-
story?
I had an experience with that. We used to put regular motor oil in the trunk, and it was an environmental mess. But anyway, I was taking the boat shorthanded over to the yard to be hauled out one day. And I wanted to get the oil out of the centerboard trunk to pump it out into a bucket. And I had the little plug off the top and was going past the Naval Academy under power and hit some waves from the one of the YPs going by. And it actually distributed all the oil that was in the centerboard trunk evenly over the ceiling of the boat and the bunks. It was just
Yeah,
like
there
a
you go.
geyser came right out of it. So that cured me on putting a heavy oil in it. And like Peter, I use vegetable oil.
So John, you do that routinely. I think it's 6 quarts or something like that. Is that right? Of vegetable oil?
It takes 4 or 5 quarts, yeah, but you don't know how much of it is going out when you're pouring it in.
Okay. Well, what are the
So
other,
it's,
is anybody
Okay.
else doing that?
I've got one more comment on the centerboard, and I haven't been able to do it yet. The Groco company that makes the valves and a lot of bronze fittings for the boat is located just across the bay from us on Kent Island. And I go through that factory from time to time and talk to the guys who are making the stuff. And they make now a Zerk fitting, all stainless, including a little screw. And I put those Zerk fittings into our bronze through-hole valves and pump some grease in them. And it really does a great job of lubricating the valves. And I just leave the stainless Zerk fittings in there. But the guy who runs the Groco plant put me onto a special kind of grease that it adheres to anything in the water. And this is just fabulous stuff. I've fiddled with it for about a year now. And you can put it on something and run that back and forth in the water, and the grease remains, it keeps its lubricating characteristics, doesn't wash off. So the next time we have the boat hauled out, I'm going to take the top off the centerboard trunk and grease that shaft up with this grease that this guy from Groco put me onto. And if anybody has a question about it, just email me and I'll give you what the specs are on that grease.
Now, can't you post it to the Facebook page?
What was that?
Can you post it to the Facebook page?
I have no idea how to even get on this thing. If Carol wasn't here, you wouldn't be hearing from me.
If you get it to us, we can maybe put it on.
well,
was
yeah, I
actually-
was just gonna say, Paul is the master, working at Dell, and he's taken the helm at handling our website needs. So, Paul, I know we're 3 minutes after 1900 now. Question for, do we want to go 5 more minutes?
Let's go, let's 5 more minutes for the people who want to stay. I have a question. Is anybody using a bowsprit to get the tack of an isometric in front of the bow, to get it out in front of the boat? I think there are some removable bowsprits, I believe. Has anybody had any experience with that?
I actually think we had a presentation by, man, I don't recall who, but we
You
have.
did have one.
Yeah, about the configuration of the bowsprit hookup for the spin. So Peter, you probably recall that.
I'm trying to remember who it was. I don't.
Yep.
It's
It
the
was,
gentleman
it was,
from Southern California.
Ah,
He got a boat
yeah.
that takes out to
it
Newport.
was one of the Southern
Catalina.
California boys.
Yeah.
Is it Patrick?
John said,
It was John Severin.
yeah.
All right, so
Okay.
I will tell you that I've sailed on Actea and they fly the ASIM off the regular spinnaker pole.
Of a spinnaker pole.
Yes, so that they plant the spinnaker pole forward and they run the ASIM off the spinnaker pole.
But I would add, they also have a reaching strut, which when you get the pole that close to the forestay, you probably want, unless you want to be replacing stanchions.
Yep.
But they also have a carbon fiber mast and I think Dyneema rigging instead of stainless steel wire. I had a nice
No, they
talk
got
with them.
stainless. It's,
They have stainless?
I think it's stainless, yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a good article that we need to post up on the website because I spent some time with them on the phone. I wanted to get a little bit of understanding of their Bermuda, the races to Bermuda. And they had an article that was written up with a number of very good pictures that's on the Newport Bermuda website that we can post that. I think at one point we may have them come talk a little bit about what they did preparing for it. But I believe in the photo, it does say it's Dyneema rigging. So what they've effectively done is removed a lot of weight up out of the rig. They were able to take out 300 pounds of ballast because for every pound you take out of the mast, you know, you need it probably 10 less pounds of ballast to offset that. But they've got, I would say, a tricked out boat. And someone was commenting that, you know, racing a Bermuda 40 is not necessarily competitive. They went ahead and won the Newport Bermuda race in 2014, and not just the class. They took the Lighthouse Trophy. And I would say they were probably an extreme anomaly for most of the Bermuda 40 owners in terms of what they've done with the boat and how well they've got it to perform. But
Yeah, Connie and Michael have done a fabulous job in keeping that boat as stock as they can, particularly on the interior. They're not drilling lightning holes through joiner work and tearing things out. I've done a small race on that boat, but there were 8 of us aboard racing the boat. I sailed the back end of the boat with 2 other people, and it was an exciting boat to sail. If it's not making its numbers, Michael gets really upset. And they have the boat, I wouldn't say tricked out. It is very organized. They know exactly where everything should go and what it should do. They have a regular crew, and it's a fabulous boat. There's no question about it.
And most of you would be horrified if you were professional racers about the fact that down below, as John says, it's still a Bermuda 40. All the stuff is still there.
Yeah, and she was the original Mark III boat. She was originally Peter Cooper's boat on sound spars. And Peter convinced Hinckley to move that mainmast 21 inches further aft. And I think it was almost 4 feet to the mast.
And make it bigger, yeah.
So it was,
I see.
and they also added some ballast. But Carol and I thought about getting a Mark III, but we couldn't carry a Dyer Dank up on the cabin top. So we forego the Mark III and kept with and bought the Mark II. And we still carry a little Dyer Dank upside down every once in a while.
So did IKEA do anything underwater, like fairings or anything like that, that we non-IKEA types could do for club racing, Wednesday night racing?
Yeah,
One thing
he
they
did.
did
He did
do
a
is
couple of things. He did a couple of things. He put a little piece to fill in over the rudder to fare out between the rudder and the hull, and he also actually trimmed off the centerboard so as not to create the little vortexes. He doesn't have a square tip to the centerboard. It's rounded off to eliminate that vortex. So those are the 2 big things that he did underwater.
So that's something that we could do if we wanted to, if we wanted.
There's also some, the bow had a heavy battery placement with the setup of the electronic, and was moved the heavy battery back to center. And John, I think we were talking about where they were above the settees in place.
Michael has whatever those dry cell batteries are, and he has a different configuration of battery. The last time I looked at the boat, anyway, and they're underneath the settees in the middle of the boat. on each side, so that he's got the same amount of battery power, but the batteries are located down low, and he gets the weight of those 4 golf cart batteries out of the bow.
Peter, I got a quick question for
Boat
you.
has its own naval architect.
Correct.
Yeah.
Peter, you say that Michael is using a spinnaker pole to push forward the tack of the asymmetric. I have a hard time visualizing that. There's a spinnaker pole ring on the mast, and then there's a spinnaker pole on top of the
No,
bow, or
the
does it angle
spinnaker,
down? Huh?
no. It depends on how your mast is rigged. His is able to go pretty much level straight out. So the track on the mast goes pretty far down. And John, I'm the only boat on the bay that has 2 naval architects on the boat.
You know,
That's
I
it. I
wrote,
hope-
I
Peter, I
wrote-
hope they're in agreement.
Oh, no,
That
we
could be an
don't
argument.
agree.
We'd be like
We
having
don't
2
always
captains on a boat.
agree.
You know, I raced my boat to Bermuda, the Daytona Bermuda race, which is actually the longest Bermuda race, but not the most famous. And I used a spinnaker pole for my asymmetrical. I had 2 asymmetricals actually, and but I had the pole that sticks out on the side. What do we call it?
The whisker,
Not the whisker pole. No.
oh, reaching,
Reaching
Yeah,
strut.
reaching strut. I had a
Strut.
reaching strut. Yeah, I used the reaching strut, and it worked like a charm. We did very well in it, but just did exactly that.
But you have the tack of the spinnaker of the asymmetric at the bow plate. You didn't have it forward of the bow of the bow.
No, right.
Okay, but what I'm wondering, if you had it on a mast ring, and then you're pushing the tack of the asymmetric spinnaker out in front of the bow, what keeps the spinnaker pole from going port to starboard, from sliding back and forth? What stabilizes it? Don't you have to stabilize it in the middle or the end or something? Am I making sense?
You're over my pay
Yeah.
grade.
The way I rig mine is I put the guy through the pole to the tack of the spinnaker, and then I run that back to the winch. Now, I don't have a jumper strut, so I can't bring it way forward. But typically the port starboard motion is going to be taken up by the guy back to one of the primaries. And then the force of the sail pulling it forward keeps it in a locked position. But as a quick side note, I did paste into chat the link to the article about Actea and the work they did, and they have some really fascinating pictures in there. And in fact, one of those pictures shows the mast with the Dyneema shrouds, and then the rudder modification that was just mentioned, where they faired it. So instead of being a flat top, it's faired up. So when it turns, it's closer to the hull, less water gets through. But it's pretty fascinating to read about what they did and how seriously they take it.
So where do we find that article?
If you open the chat on the on your Zoom session, it's cut and paste in there. If for any reason you have a problem, let me know and I can email it to you.
Yeah, we can also put it in the
post it
the
on the
email when we
website.
send out the PowerPoint to everybody after the session. So I know this is great. I don't want to end. Maybe we should go, well, okay, vote. Who wants to go to back to hour and a halves versus 1 hour? Richard. I have 2, 3 hands, 4 hands, Quentin. Okay, Rick, definitely. Okay, Patrick, I think it's a done deal. I think we're going back to 90-minute sessions. So with that, we have an option to go 90 minutes or, to finish out, or we can finish out now. But we do, by the way, just a little, not a commercial or promotion or anything. This is just asking if you're in, and Patrick, I don't want to pick on you because I did that last year more than I, but if we are in situations on the West Coast or in other areas, and you think that could rally some interest in, just getting to know the folks and having, some social get-togethers, as well as encouraging a $25 a year, membership into joining us in this conversation and joining the association. It'd be great to spread the wealth here. And we have a goal. We put together a whole list from the shipbuilders log, all the B40s that are made and their numbers, but we don't have all their current owners and all their current addresses. So little by little, we're trying to locate everyone. So even if they're not interested in joining this association, we know kind of where they are, and we might be able to encourage some, connectivity and camaraderie. So with that, and if anyone wants to, kind of raise their hand, give me a shout after this meeting and just let me know. And we're putting together an easy, it's not a high demand thing. It's just, you can delegate all you want, once you just organizing it and just making a quick report on some of these B40 tech sessions on what's going on in your area. That's really kind of what we're looking to do, at least for this year. Okay, Jeff, any comments as our Vice Commodore here?
No, I think perhaps in the next session, we might discuss, at least being somewhat parochial, some cruises for the Chesapeake Bay this year.
Yeah. That's yeah, actually, thank you for bringing that up. So I carried over this slide from in fact, Jeff, I remember this one we put together.
Yeah.
On activities, but I think our list of potential activities, Jeff, in the Chesapeake has doubled. And with the help of not only Penny, Zahn, Rick Stanford, and yourself, with various ideas, when you put them all together on a list, there's a whole slew of, and the Melchners and Carol's gracious hosting of the Annapolis Boat Show, a dinner and a rendezvous at their home in Annapolis. Certainly ideas that have formulated around the Chesapeake. So Jeff, any more you kind of want to talk about the Chesapeake activities?
Not now. No, I think we've had enough.
After I told you everything, right?
All right.
Sorry.
May 7th. The cruise to Oxford, other people are racing. We have Bermuda 40s, we just go. All right, so I think that's probably the first thing on the calendar for people to think about.
Was there somebody sponsoring that cruise to Oxford? That's not the Oxford race, is it? From the AYC?
It is. It's the AYC Oxford race.
Okay.
But
so I'm geographically challenged.
If you feel challenged, you don't need to race. You can just go.
Oh, really? I mean, did you start?
There's a start, Richard, but if you want to race me, you can go.
So as the new person, where is
So is it gonna
this
be
AYC? Is that Annapolis Yacht Club?
Yes, it is.
And so that's down in Chesapeake and then goes to Oxford.
Yeah, so the question was Chesapeake. The question was Chesapeake activities. So
it's down there. Got it. Understood.
Carol and I used to race quite a bit, but we got over it.
We all know that if someday is sailing, she's racing. She's not just coming along for the ride.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. Certainly, we hope the Elf Classic in September will gain some more interest there. And I know Paul's organizing along with Ed Stroh. They've been talking about into the Barrington, Rhode Island, Newport, and around Nantucket.
Yeah, the other possibility is to do Fagawi. I see John is on, he keeps his boat down in Hyannis. I'm curious, John, have you ever done the Gowie race?
Have you ever done the
There, I'm in my car, so I apologize. Yes, I have several times, and we've been very competitive in that race.
Yep.
I have not done it probably the last 3 or 4 years. Our club, which is the Hyannis Shot Club, serves as the host. And what's interesting is over the last few years, Paul, because of COVID, it has not been a race to Nantucket. Last year, they actually had a race around Nantucket Sound, start and finish in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And I'm told that they're going to try to do that again this year. So they will not be going to Nantucket. That's the unofficial word.
Yeah.
And again, I apologize, I'm not on video. I'm actually in my car trying to listen. So
No worries.
but thank you for having me tonight.
Sure. Well, thank you for joining us. You have a boat that's one number away from mine. So I have 137. You gets you 136.
Oh,
Yes. Yep. Mine is 136, 1974.
Yep.
It's talking.
Oh, fantastic.
Small world. So we're going to conclude for tonight. I thought this was a fantastic conversation. Yes.
Kristen, this is the first Bermuda 40 rendezvous in the Chesapeake.
Oh my goodness, this is the first
Wow.
one.
Picture, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And where in the Chesapeake was?
That's in behind, what's that thing?
Divided?
No, it's on the Wye
Shaw
River.
Bay.
It's in Shaw Bay on the Wye River.
Shaw Bay.
And we had a race there. And I think a couple from Massachusetts won it. And one of the Hinckley sons came down to prove for them. So, but anyway, Hinckley
Yeah.
in their literature is the first $1 million rail.
It was a long
We're-
time ago.
Yes. we should convert this into
With
to put it on the
1970.
website.
Yeah, and it's 1977.
Wow. That's something. I think we're looking for photos too, in this, Richard, John, photos from social gatherings around that time in the early days. And we'd love to put together kind of this vintage history site, just how close the camaraderie was with the members. And John, you are a founding member, and we're so honored to have you on the call today. We truly appreciate your
Well, that's the
contributions and your history.
association has come a long way, and it is probably the last holdout to keep these boats in the center of people's attraction, and just getting it promulgated. It was the first cruiser racer. It was the boat that, if you like to go cruising and wanted to do some racing, a B40 would fit that bill very nicely. So anyway, that's the news from Annapolis.
Great. John, we'll have you back in March. So also I'd like to thank Rick Stanford for providing some insights here, tonight's call. And Paul, of course, who's done a tremendous amount of support and effort, and in getting us into 2022 heavy, with a lot of wind at our backs, if you will. And then, of course, Jeff. Jeff had the vision for all of this to happen, and hopefully, we're what you see, Jeff, is starting to come true, little by little. And we're excited about the 2022 year ahead. So with that, we're open to new, fresh topics. Send us an email, get your logins, experience the website, and we wish you a very nice evening or morning for you, Whitney.
Thank you.
Great job, Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for organizing.
Quentin, thank you.
I would
My
like to-
pleasure.
I would like to volunteer one quick answer to the heavy weather sailing. At what wind speed do you throw in your first reef? And we have found that invariably it's exactly 5 knots lower than when you put in the reef.
That's great. I love it. Quentin, I see you speaking, so I didn't hear you on mute, but oh, well, we want to say, wish you a very good evening and have a good one, everyone. And we'll catch you on the next month's B40 tech session.
Kristen, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you
Chris.
very much.
Thank you,
Looking
Joe.
forward to
Thank you.
seeing you.
Joe Carr out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Night now.